For the few guys in the back.
It's an interesting approach. Best team of all time! Last few minutes together. What a night in Istanbul!
Are you not entertained?
Oh my God!
How you feeling about that?
Oh, see what he's really got.
That's awesome. That was the first time they've shown this sizzle reel. It's pretty good. Thank you all for being here. Ian, thank you for being here. We're going to talk about live cloud production today. And before you jump into live cloud production, Ian, there's sort of a foundation that needs to be set. So could you help describe a little bit about that foundation that enables you to then produce in the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back several years now. Back in 2018, Discovery, before the Warner Brothers and Discovery merger, was facing having to re-implement a whole load of technology all across Europe. We had the Eurosport business in many different markets, and we had 10 quite sizable facilities across Europe containing a lot of legacy broadcast equipment that was all end of life, needing replacement. So we started a project to consolidate all of those resources, and a project to move to completely remote production, so we could actually separate the control surfaces from the back-end technology. And at that point, we moved to a hybrid cloud solution. So we had our own owned and run data centers where we're able to consolidate all of the broadcast equipment. Very, very large 2110-based, uncompressed facility. For those people who like the stats, something like now 250,000 NMOS endpoints in that 2110 facility. By the end of this year, it will be 300,000 NMOS endpoints. So between these, between our private data centers and our private cloud, we're able to share and exchange video flows. As much as possible was actually put into the public cloud, and all of the control and orchestration for those platforms rely on cloud resources, on AWS. And what we've started to do is, I mean, we've done now 2 Olympic Games on that platform. So we did the COVID delayed Tokyo Games, and then more recently the Beijing Games. And that platform will continue to be used, obviously, for Paris 24 next year. But more recently, our business is growing. So you may have heard, now we've launched TNT Sports in the UK, which includes all of the former BT Sport channels. And we're really accelerating the rate at which we're moving to entirely cloud-based production. So we built this huge facility. It's got something like 1,200 Arista switches. And if anybody knows anything about the scarcity of Arista switches, it's tough. You can't keep extending that just for an event that might just last 1 or 2 weeks. So we're looking at all of the places possible where we can leverage public cloud to actually burst and actually deal with the huge amount of load. I think you saw from the show reel the depth and the number of events and the number of hours that we have to cover is really quite extensive.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about how you decide which shows you end up, or which events you end up putting into the cloud and producing in the cloud. Can you describe that process a little bit on how do you decide what goes in the cloud, what stays in the traditional production method? Well,
I mentioned we have a very wide range of sporting rights, from like super premium, things like the UEFA Champions League, through all the way down through fight sports. It's a very wide range, and not all of those sports require the same level of production facilities. So where we can, where we are maybe taking a world feed and just adding some basic presentation around that, it's a great candidate to be able to do that. And I think we'll go on to talk about some of the benefits of doing that later on. But also, BT Sport, we're one of the innovators really, again, because of COVID or COVID influenced, the necessity to remotely control existing facilities, move existing productions into the cloud came out of a necessity, and we're building on the work that BT Sport did to actually further accelerate. So rather than just be something we use during COVID, we use it if we have no legacy control rooms or galleries free, to becoming, we're just going to put all of those sports rights on the same platform, and that gives the production teams the ability to work with software-based tools, and they get the same production experience for every event that they're producing. They're not moving between our legacy control rooms and a cloud platform. So on that extent, it really is driven by the volume, the types of sport that form those decisions.
Gotcha. So you hit on this, and when we spoke earlier, you said what started as a solution to a COVID problem, right, has sustained, and we've seen the benefits of that, hence this acceleration into cloud-based production. What are some of those benefits that you're seeing by producing in the cloud?
Yeah, well, obviously one of the huge costs of doing live sport comes from having to ship loads of people and mountains of equipment around the world, and there's a really good example. Great example is with the rights we hold from UEFA, we have some obligations to do the Youth League. Right. And obviously that doesn't have tens of millions of viewers. Right. We have got an obligation to deliver that as a host broadcaster, but equally we want to do it at a price point that makes sense. So in the traditional model, you'd usually have a big OB truck, a scanner at the ground, and that also needs generally additional power. It needs additional tender vehicle for all the cameras. And you may have had in a traditional OB setup, 10, 20, 24 people was not uncommon to do a large multi-camera production. You're going to need a links vehicle, satellite truck, a way of getting those pictures back. And then back at base, you're still likely to have some additional staff. So large number of people on site. And all of those people have got to get there. You've got to get the trucks on site. So the sort of carbon footprint of doing these productions is huge. So what we're able to do with the cloud production is actually go to a much lighter weight on-site presence. We still obviously need the camera operators. We need people to operate those cameras, but we can use 4G and 5G wireless RF technology. We can use cabled internet if that's provided at the ground, and bring all of those feeds directly into the cloud. So our OB provider is actually handing off, and they actually, they do grading and shading on the cameras. All of that part that would be done in the truck is effectively being done in the cloud and handed off to us as cloud contribution. And if we're getting feeds that are already being delivered to the cloud, it makes sense to produce, mix it, do replay and so on in the cloud, and just bring the final output back down to the ground. And so this model is being used now for the UEFA Youth League. We're continuing to do that this season. And I think it's a good example of how you can leverage the benefits both in reducing the number of on-site staff. Both the people on site and the people back at home base, if you have late night football, you've equally got the problem back at home base, because if the production finishes late, you need taxis. Those people have got to get home at night. So one of the other advantages is being able to move to a remote operation model, and those people can have the same user experience, see the same low latency monitoring feeds, produce the show, and they're sat in their home office at the end of the garden in their shed. So it's transformational from the production teams, because we don't need to keep people late at night in a dark TV studio and then have to get them all home at the end of the night.
Right. So you're talking, there's clearly cost savings when you're not sending all of those people and shipping all the equipment in the trucks. Time savings, I would imagine, right, in the setup. I like the point about the sustainability of it all too, right? Traditional production is terrestrially heavy, so to be able to move those workloads to the cloud, I think does significantly impact carbon footprint. And then lastly, sort of the being able to access talent from wherever. I think that's great, because you're not limited necessarily to who can be in the truck or who can be in the studio. You can actually access talent globally.
Yeah,
right?
You could use the best team for the job, because
right.
they're available. So if they have childcare obligations, they need to stay home, you've got that flexibility that you can give staff. Some of those productions can be quite large, so we're still using traditional. We have now a new gallery in the new facility we built for TNT Sport that enables a large production still to work together. So this control room has space for 10, 11 people in the control room. So the production team can still come together, they still get control surfaces they're familiar with, they still get monitoring that they're familiar with, but actually they're leveraging the cloud technology.
Somewhat seamless to them, right?
Yeah.
So you were talking about remote commentary, and I thought that was a really interesting example that you had talked about before and how that's done. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, well, one of the real complexity, particularly of the Eurosport operation, is the fact that we're producing in up to 20 languages. So some of those productions have got multiple commentaries in multiple languages that need to be added. And we're able to do those from on-site voiceover booths in the traditional way, but we put significant investment in a remote commentary solution that allows all of those commentary feeds to be contributed from anywhere in Europe. And we do a huge number of those sessions now. In a typical week, we have probably 600 or 700 commentary sessions throughout a regular broadcast week. When we're doing something like the Olympic Games, I think we did just under 14,000 commentary sessions on the remote platform. And these are, again, people at home, in home offices. They could be anywhere in Europe. They're still getting low latency pictures. They're contributing, high quality audio feeds, but they're using, remote production and cloud commentary. So it's an essential part now of our operation. We couldn't accommodate that number of commentators. And some of those commentaries have multiple, they have co-commentators, and they're able to either be in the same room or at home in their spare bedroom. So
that's awesome. I like that story. So we're talking about producing in the cloud and a lot of similarities, some differences. So if you're out there looking for people to join the team, to participate in live cloud production, what skill sets are you looking for? What is the most important, the most important factors you're looking for in people who are going to want to contribute in the space?
It's a really good point because I think there are some different skills. We have a lot of multi-skilled operators who can do many things in a traditional broadcast facility, and really the skills are really no different. It's just the tools you're using. The switcher doesn't look that different. It could be a big one, it could be a small one, and I think providing people are not freaked out by where's my switcher or it's this big, it still works in the same way, right? So I think it's have an open mind. We have training programs, and we're really expanding the sort of knowledge of the back end. We need different skills in a support department. We need different tech managers who are familiar with the technology, know how to go to the backup feed, but really it is no different from legacy production. The speed with which you're able to cut video, the responsiveness really is no different from being in a regular PCR, no different from being in an OB truck. In fact, one of our guys said he's been in trucks with lower response times than the cloud setup currently gives us. So really, no special skills. You're able to produce and without constraints.
That's awesome. So what should we be looking for from Turner Sports coming up? I loved the sizzle. There's so much going on. You have Olympics coming up in Paris. Can you tell us a little bit more about Turner Sports in the seasons ahead?
Well, absolutely. I mean, TNT Sports has got a massive program. It's starting to ramp up because all of the UEFA Champions League matches start this week. So maybe ask me how I'm feeling next weekend. So there is an awful lot going on, an awful lot of really good content. We're already well underway in preparing for Paris 24. So obviously we've had really quite severely COVID impacted games both in Tokyo and Beijing. So even though for our UK teams, for our Paris teams, I mean, it's our home games, right? So I think Paris 24 is going to be really huge. The stats are, it's 32 sports, 320 something different events, and every minute of every event is covered on our online platform. So it's a massive amount of content, but given that we have both our hybrid and the fact that we can use cloud production, the sort of scale of it doesn't daunt us. But so we're really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a very immersive games. There's a lot of thought and direction gone into how do we, best bring the fans closer to the action. So, we'll see a lot more, mobile cameras probably, and again, I think the cloud technology could play an import in bringing the fans closer to where the action is. So we're all really looking forward to it, and it's quite interesting because, of course, during the games, the football starts up as well. So we actually have really huge amounts of feed and content to deal with. So if anybody out there is looking to join the team, we're always
all
looking.
Hands on deck.
So yeah.
All right, one last question before we close. So we talked about live cloud production. What other trends are you seeing, either in production or in the sports industry itself, or media at large, that you think are interesting, that you're following?
Yeah, I think there's obviously AI is the big buzzword. You only had to see the number of people that were in the last session. There's a whole number of different things those technologies can give us. I think we talked about the commentary problem. One of the problems of doing so many commentary languages is making sure the right languages are on the right channels. Is that Romanian or not on that track? And one of the things we've worked together with AWS on is actually building a platform that lets us monitor that automatically. So we actually have recognition behind the scenes that is going, this track is supposed to be French, doesn't currently have anybody speaking French on it, for example. So I think that's an area where the tool set is able to help monitor what is really a big, large-scale problem. We can't have somebody just manually monitoring 20 different languages on that number of feeds. We may have 400 simultaneous ingest ports all going, and the sheer scale of it means you have to automate and you have to look at the problem in a different way and use some of the new tools to be able to solve those problems.
That's awesome. Ian, thank you for your time. Everyone, thank you for your time and for joining us, and have a wonderful show.